Welcome to Speechless. We're live from SPNN in St. Paul, Minnesota. Thanks for watching the show. We're just a couple blocks away from a place that, last week ripped apart about 260 babies, limb for limb. And I brought up a story last week that talked about an abortionist doctor who's on trial for murder, manslaughter, and that trial ended, I believe, yesterday. Today they began jury deliberations, and as of now, I haven't heard anything on that. But basically, the word is for monetary reasons. After he found out that he had caused many incisions in the operation and didn't bind up the bleeding. And I mean, once you're in there and you create cuts, it's really hard to stop that bleeding. But 30-year-old died of the abortion and of the cuts, and he did nothing. He sent her away instead of getting her to a medical facility that could help her. And it was dire to begin with, but he decided to send her away. It would have been hard for even a hospital to help her. So, waiting for the jury verdict on that issue. I got a question to ask you, and that is, who sells more arms? Okay, we think of arm dealers and stuff like that, but is it the NRA? National Rifle Association? Well, they don't sell any guns. Or is it Planned Parenthood that sells more arms? So, we've been discussing how Planned Parenthood, or NRA, hasn't killed anybody, but Planned Parenthood has killed, close to 500,000, 600,000 a year through their abortion facilities. So this is in the same light, just a little different angle to it. Who's selling arms? Well, it's Planned Parenthood that's selling the body parts of these aborted babies. So anyway, a horrific thing. And of course, the correspondence dinner and the comments about abortion, and I'm glad they failed. Those jokes failed because they should. It's, don't try it till you knock it, and then knock it out. Kill the baby is the anthem there. And I'm glad that failed. Well, hey, prime piece of the show, we got a number of issues. We got a lot of things to catch up on because a lot has happened. But I was supposed to have a guest on last week that couldn't make it because an emergency happened. I'm going to tell you that story because we were in court today, or she was in court today. They wouldn't let me in the courtroom. It's interesting, to say the least. So we'll tell that story when we get to it. But I want to talk real quickly about socialized medicine because, this is what you get in Britain. And, of course, we've heard the story about Alfie and how the hospital took control of the baby. There may have been a misdiagnosis on Alfie, but socialized medicine goes as far to the extent that you don't have the right to get the treatment that you want or you want somebody else to do. So this is how bad it is. And so Alfie, when the hospital said, we're not doing anything, okay, we're cutting things off, we're going to let him die, we're not going to let you take that baby someplace else because they might die over there. So it's just the bizarre consequences of socialized medicine is that you have no control over your health care or the health care of somebody under your guardianship, your own children. Of course, this is a big problem with our courts today in family law in general, is that the courts don't recognize that they're your children. They act as if the children are theirs. And Yeah, this is a sad day. Now, part of the report is that
An Italian hospital wanted to take him,
right,
but they wouldn't let her.
right, yeah, and the Italian hospital wanted to take Alfie and do what they could, but Great Britain wouldn't let it happen. So it's just kind of interesting, the comparison between how Queen Elizabeth's grandbaby got treated versus Alfie. And it's just too bad. It's disgusting, to say the least. And it's just, there's no freedom of choice in this. You know, okay, hospital, you're going to let them die, fine. Let us, the parents, take them home to die. No, not going to let you do that. You know, well, then let us take them to Italy so that they could take care of them. No, not going to let you do that. That's sick. I mean, that's a mental disease that's going on there, that the state says we know better than you. And we know better, and better is that you die. Okay, that's a real bad sign, but that's socialized medicine. Do you think it's going to, you know, get any better here? You know, if we have the Obamacare and that kind of stuff keeps going on, it's not. You lose your rights. If that's not already happening here in Minnesota, Steve Carlson, who ran for U.S. Senate, will be on our show coming up here in the next couple weeks, and how his wife is being denied treatment that she was getting and was on and was being paid for. But the hospital says, no, no more. You know, the system shut down when things were working. So bizarre, to say the least. And we're just seeing, I guess today is a whole lot about government overreach and government doing too much, whether it's the courts or the legislature, doing far too much that they don't need to be doing, and then destroying and damaging people's lives. I don't have film on this because it just happened, but last night at the City of Grant City Council meeting, they have public comments, and Bob Zick went up to speak during public comments, and the mayor shut him down. Not only shut him down, but he shut him down saying, Bob Zick, the reason I'm not letting you talk is because I don't like what you're going to say. All right? And now this isn't the first time that this has happened to Bob or it's happened to me. I tried speaking at City of Grant. They wouldn't let me talk during visitors' presentations. But you got to understand the law on this, okay? When you have visitors' presentations, you can't restrict who gets to speak or what they say. And yet, City of Grant does it. City of Maplewood does that. City of St. Paul School Board does that. So it's a problem, and where are these directives coming from? Are they coming from the League of Minnesota Cities saying this is the way to behave? Matter of fact, did the City of Grant, my understanding, the City of Grant's attorney said and asked Bob a question, are you going to sue the City of Grant? And Bob, from what I heard, said, probably, you know, maybe, maybe not, but probably. And the city attorney said, well, then we can't talk to you, which is a bunch of baloney. You know, you can't talk to us, which is a bunch of baloney. Probably doesn't mean, so that means anybody can't talk because everybody's probably going to sue their cities. They should. You know, most of you could sue your city and have just cause. Street assessments alone will get you there. If you know the law, you'd know you'd be being ripped off in your street assessment. So, okay. Well, so, you know, go speak at your city council member meetings. Find out what's going on. Try to hold them accountable. You know, if they're taking money from you, they're probably gouging you in some way, and you're not getting your money's worth. You need to find out what they're doing. Try to limit their spending. Now, Minnesota Voters Alliance has a case coming up, April 25th. Now, I filmed the last hearing where Minnesota Voters Alliance is suing Secretary of State Steve Simon because Steve Simon isn't giving out information that's public data, and he's refusing to do it. There's been depositions that have taken place because now, May 25th, down at the Ramsey County Courthouse in front of Judge Frisch, F-R-I-S-C-H, there's going to be a hearing on getting this data out. Okay, so they had depositions. Steve Simons, and you heard it in the videotape that I showed, and actually you can go on youtube.com/speechlessmn to see that court hearing where Steve Simon's attorney said, and then Steve Simon in the deposition, Steve Simon in a letter said, I can give out information to whoever I want to. Okay, so that means public information. He's saying he could refuse to give it out to people. He can give it to one group and not to another. It's his discretion. Public data. And he's saying, I don't want to give out this voting information to Minnesota Voters Alliance. I bring that up because there's a big cover-up going on. And that's what's happening. It's the same reason why the FBI is not giving information to and slow walking the information to Congress unless there's been some serious pressure put on the Department of Justice. And that's because they're covering things up. They're trying to cover up information. And they should be held accountable for covering up and doing the slow walk instead of giving this information out in a timely manner that's required by law. So, Secretary of State, there was a legislative audit done, and we talked about that a couple shows ago, but I focused on that show on the 612 felons that voted, more than enough to change a statewide election in Minnesota. Well, there was also 17,000 voters who are unaccounted for, that they voted and they don't know who they are or where they live. But they gave out the information that they lived at a place, swore an oath, and then a month later, within a month, a card was sent out to them, and those cards came back saying the person doesn't live here. Return to sender, address unknown. It wasn't, if they had moved someplace else, it goes to a forwarding address. 17,000 people that they don't, their vote shouldn't count. We don't know who they are. Okay. Now, it started out as a higher number, but it got reconciled down to a lower number. So 17,000. Then Representative Quam asked the question in the government operations meeting, which we played on our show, was, well, where is the HAVA data? Help America Vote Again. Where's that data? Minnesota can tie into the Social Security numbers, and when we do that, we're finding out that there's 16,000 votes that don't match up to the Social Security numbers, registered voters who don't match up. There's bad information with the Social Security number and the voter. Doesn't make sense. And what was interesting is the people from the state auditor's office who were doing the research on their voter registration system, when the questions were asked about HAVA, they go, oh, we didn't know, we don't know about that. Yet in the report, it talks about it specifically. It talks about HAVA. It talks about being able to get and cross-reference with Social Security, the numbers. But they're up there saying, well, we don't know what you're talking about. But it's in their report. Okay, I mean, it's just really what is going on? And I'm more and more convinced, especially in the last couple of weeks, of just the incompetence of government. And some of it being intentional, some of it not being intentional. But to protect our vote, there's a better way. Let's just do provisional ballots. All you do is you go, hey, if you can't, if you're on the list that says you're a felon and you're insisting you're not, swear your oath, do your vote. It's a provisional ballot till it gets checked out. Okay, if there's a close race where we need to count all these provisional ballots, then we count them. If there's not, then we don't. It's just not that difficult. All right, we got another update. Let's see, so that's May 25th, and then somewhere around there, we should be hearing from the U.S. Supreme Court on the T-shirt case as to what you can wear into polling booths, which could be a big win for free speech and Minnesota Voters Alliance because they raised that issue to the courts. Okay, I wanted to show just kind of give you an update. This happened April 21st, 2018 to April 27th. This is what I will call my jihad report. This comes from the website What Makes Islam So Different, or What Would Muhammad Do, or The Religion of Peace. But the jihad report says there was 35 attacks last April 21st to 27th that was done in the name of Muhammad. 238 people were killed, 297 injured. There were 4 suicide blasts, and they happened in 10 countries. So just for March alone, the totals are in. There's 171 attacks, 738 killed, 1,067 injured, 26 suicide blasts happened in 27 countries, all done in the name of Muhammad, and some of it and a lot of it done against Muslims. Muslims killing Muslims because one group of Muslims is an apostate versus the other, and each side calls each other apostates. So, you know, that's what's coming to America and is already here. We have that type of violence going on in Minnesota. Not as drastic, but stabbings and shootings and various other issues. Okay. Boy, now another update, just kind of unbelievable here, is that Sandra Grazzini-Rucki, a week ago Friday, was sentenced, wasn't sentenced, but had her sentence. You know, Sandra Grazzini-Rucki was the gal who protected her children from an abusive husband, and that's her claim. And the girls ran away on their own. Mom, Sandra Grazzini-Rucki, went to get the girls and went and protected them. The next day the court was open. They filed a writ of habeas corpus in front of Judge Knutson to find out who was where the girls were. Now, Sandra knew where they were, but they wanted a hearing based on the girls' allegations that they were being abused by the dad, and the girls wanted to be able to talk to the judge. The judge just totally ignored the writ of habeas corpus, and then basically, you know, 2.5 years later, the girls were found and safe and unharmed and being taken care of and being protected by another family. Well, Sandra, even though the law says you can protect a child who's being abused mentally or physically, you can deprive a parent or guardian of their rights if you have reasonable belief that this is happening. Sandra was not allowed to give that defense, even though it's allowed by law, and was not allowed to give evidence of the abusive nature of David Rucki. And therefore, the defense was meaningless because then the law was meaningless because it wasn't allowed to be used. So Sandra was sentenced to 1 year and a day. All that stayed, and with time served and everything. Well, Sandra, when she was found guilty, only had 40 days left of sentencing and of time to serve. And she asked that her sentence be executed, meaning that she gets to do it all at once, but the judge tried to spread it out over 6 years. And she'd have to come in every so often, a week here or there, twice a year, in order to make up the rest of the time. The judge would not let Sandra execute her sentence, which does not happen and is not supposed to happen. Well, there was an appeal. Sandra won the appeal. The lower court was ordered to have Sandra execute her sentence, but by this time, because she was found in Florida and transportation and everything, she only had 14 days left for her sentence, to serve her sentence. And with that, and that ends this Friday, this coming Friday. But what's interesting in all of that, now there was a different judge for the sentencing. Okay, why, I don't know, but another retired judge, these district court judges, I guess, I don't know, why do we have them if we're using all these retired judges? So a retired judge came in and sentenced Sandra, or didn't sentence her, but said, okay, you can execute your sentence, so this is how it's going to work. 14 days in the Shakopee Women's Prison. And I'm going, Shakopee Women's Prison? Why Shakopee's Women's Prison? Sandra was serving her sentence at the Ramsey County Workhouse, because that's where Dakota County sends their people, women, for workhouse-related issues. Well, come to find out that Judge Aspaugh sent Sandra to the wrong place. Instead of going to Shakopee, Sandra went to the workhouse. Now, Sandra only had 40 days left by the time she got out, but evidently it was supposed to be in Shakopee the whole time. Now you're going, well, what difference does that make? Well, as far as time being served, it doesn't make that much difference. But in the workhouse, you have a lot less freedoms than you do in Shakopee. Workhouse, you're limited to 1 visit a week for 20 minutes. I don't remember how long it is, but it's just not very long. Where in prison, you can have more than that and multiple visits during the week. At the workhouse, you have to work. At the prison, you don't. At the prison, you get a lot more different types of food. At the workhouse, you're restricted. So it's a different deal, but it's a big mess up. What happened? How did this happen? You know, it really sounds bad. You know, I mean, there was enough going on in this case that was bizarre and out of the ordinary. But what happened that gets messed up too? Unbelievable. So Dee Dee was to be Evivold, Sandra's participant, who, when the girls went to St. Cloud, they took the girls to St. Cloud, stayed overnight at Dee Dee's, then went to this other family, and in the meantime went down, did an interview with Channel 9 here in town with the girls, and the girls saying their dad's abusive and Judge Knutson won't listen to them, and that's why they're running away. And then they go back up to the horse ranch. Well, Channel 9, you know, knew all about it. They didn't know where they were or anything, but the story was there. And it was in the news. And the court can't figure it out, even though the court's presented with the information. So Dee Dee was supposed to go to Shakopee too. So they're looking at lawsuits. It's the most bizarre case that I have seen in the Minnesota court system. And to me, it just exposes all the problems that there are with our courts. And the legislature needs to hear that, and our Senator Limmer has said he's going to hear. He wants to find out about what's going on in our courts and how these judges are dealing with their laws. And it definitely comes into play for the legislature to have accountability, just like the House of Representatives is trying to hold accountable the judiciary, or the FBI, a part of the executive branch. They have a responsibility to hold the judiciary accountable too, and you can do that in Minnesota. You could have these hearings where they're exploratory, they're informative, or they're accountability hearings. What are you doing? What's going on here? Why did you do it? Find out answers. And some of this is criminal stuff that some of these employees may be doing of the state. But that type of investigation needs to happen. Remember, folks, we live in Minnesota. We're not a clean state. We're a dirty state, okay? We're known as the bastion for liberalism, and there's a lot of corporatism here too, okay? People get paid off. Things get done.
There's a difference?
Yeah, there's a difference between corporatism. It's just all a different form of corruption and liberalism. So what do you expect? You know, from a liberal state, you're going to have bad things happening. And from any state, whether it's conservative or liberal, you're going to have government doing bad things, and judges are part of that. So why in every other state do they have problems with judges but not in Minnesota? You know, and Minnesota tries to give off this impression that we got great judiciary. Judges are political. They are by nature, they have to be, they can be no other. And look at Dayton's recent appointment. Former minority leader, or was he former Speaker of the House too? I don't remember that. Minority leader in the House, appointed to the Supreme Court. Really? That's not a political appointment? Obviously it is. Every judge, look at the U.S. Supreme Court. Why do elections matter? Why does everybody going out, we got to get our Democrat president, we got to get our Republican president because they appoint judges, and that changes the outlook on the court. Well, why does it do that if all these judges are swearing to uphold the Constitution? You know, it's all political, and it's political here in Minnesota too, okay? It can't be otherwise. And so the argument to use, we can't, by having our judges appointed, it's less political. Oh, baloney. It's more political. Anyway, let's expose some of these judges. Let's get it done. And somebody trying to expose judges is Michelle MacDonald, and she has filed in the U.S. Supreme Court. It's all done, signed, sealed, and delivered, whether they'll hear it, but she's asking two questions. Whether attorneys basically have free speech. Let's see where the questions are. I passed by them. Okay. Questions presented. Allowing speech by attorneys critical of the judiciary is an essential component of the American system of government. This court has not addressed the restraint on free speech which is inherent in disciplining a lawyer for comments criticizing a judge. And that is why this case presents an issue of first impression regarding the First Amendment, free speech, and the discipline of attorneys for statements concerning the qualifications or integrity of a judge. Across the country, attorneys are generally prohibited from and severely punished for impugning judicial integrity. In scores of cases, both state and federal, courts have disciplined attorneys for making disparaging remarks about the judiciary and have almost universally rejected the constitutional standard established by the Supreme Court in New York Times versus Sullivan and Garrison versus Louisiana for punishing speech regarding government officials. The questions presented before the court are this: whether a free speech right to impugn judicial integrity must be recognized for attorneys when acting as officers of the court and making statements in court pleadings and proceedings. Do you have the right to impugn a judge when you're making pleadings and when you're in proceedings? Can you call a judge out for his bad behavior and bad rulings? You should be able to if you have free speech rights. And don't buy any of this integrity of the courts. You know, we can't have this, keep the courts in. No, don't buy that. That's baloney. That's cover-up. That's covering up the lack of integrity that the courts have. Second question, whether the disciplinary procedures for attorneys can constitutionally abrogate First Amendment rights when rules are used to punish speech that impugns that integrity of the judiciary without requiring a showing of knowledge or reckless disregard to falsity. In other words, you're going to punish an attorney for saying something bad about a judge that's truthful, but you're going to punish them anyway. Is that the right thing to do? And can you discipline an attorney for doing that? Well, the answer should be no. And since this question hasn't been heard before the U.S. Supreme Court, and they haven't answered it, it should be heard, because it's a problem going on. It's going on in Washington State. It's going on in other states where this is now building up, where attorneys are losing their license for exposing the corruption of a judge. That's not right. Man, Arizona, of course, it didn't get to the Supreme Court because it was resolved by Arizona. An attorney was disciplined, put in handcuffs. Well, Arizona, they got rid of the judge. The attorney was put in handcuffs during a trial while that attorney was representing a client. And the judge got disciplined for doing that, for being way out of bounds. But in Minnesota, boy, MacDonald did it, you know, got put in handcuffs and had to do a court hearing while having handcuffs on and not having her glasses or her shoes and in a wheelchair. Judge didn't care. Judge Knutson didn't care. Still had her conduct the trial and said, either you conduct the trial or your client forfeits the case. And the client was there. The client left because Michelle had been arrested, and the court said she's done for the day. Officers of the court said she's done for the day. Just take your stuff. And so when she wasn't done for the day, okay, saying all this doesn't happen, happens all the time. I'm going to tell you a story later. Well, I saw it today in court, what I witnessed today in court. So they tell Michelle, tell Sandra, take your stuff and go. So she does. The judge reconvenes the hearing, about 2 hours later, says, where's your client? The court knew where the client was. They told her to leave. And then says, well, either you get your client here. Well, I don't have a phone. You took my phone. It's back in the, well, we're doing it or you're forfeit. So David Knutson, immunity for the judge, in all things, in all behaviors. So instead of going after the judge, they go after Michelle MacDonald. So anyway, that's a big case, but that's not, we'll see what happens in the U.S. Supreme Court, whether they will hear it or not, but I think they have a great interest in hearing that. If they're hearing the T-shirt case on what you can wear in a courtroom, they should be hearing this. This is serious business. This deals with you as an individual and your rights to be heard and to have an attorney and have that attorney be able to protect you. And here the court's not allowing attorneys to protect their clients. Okay. Now, Michelle's got another case that should be coming up that will be heard in the 8th Circuit in federal law. Her case against actions of Dakota County officers in dealing with her arrest and her treatment during the arrest is ongoing. And it's in the, so that's going to be heard soon. We'll have more information coming on that. Hopefully go down and get to hear that, see that hearing also. Okay, let's get to the main story today. Last week I was to have a client, Yvette, and forgot her last name. Yeah, I'll find it here. I just apologize, forgot her last name. But I could find it real quick. This is what you do with live TV and lousy preparation. No, didn't want to go there. I want to go here. Yvette Baudelaire. Baudelaire. She was to be on the show talking about her custody situation with her children, or one of her children, and I don't know the story, okay? Don't even have bits and pieces until we're gonna do Wednesday's show. We're gonna do some prep work before the show. And we're getting the studio set up, and I'm not hearing anything, okay? So finally try to get a hold of her, and then I get a message from someone else saying, hey, Yvette told me to tell you, hey, it's not working today. There's an emergency, a family emergency that came up. Well, the family emergency was that her son had accused his dad of hitting him in the stomach, and he was hurt. And there was an exchange that his son came over. His mom was to pick his son up. So when the son came over, said, hey, Dad hit me in the stomach, my stomach hurt. So Yvette took her son to the emergency room. He's 10 years old. And it all got checked out there. And Yvette kept the child while the father did an ex parte motion, meaning, hey, I'm telling you one side of the story here. I'm going into the courtroom. I'm going to tell you this side of the story. You're not going to get the other side of the story. But my ex-wife isn't letting me see my child. Okay, so I want a emergency ex parte order ordering her to give me my child for my parenting time. Now, it doesn't say the child was hit, or that the father hit in the stomach. Now, I don't know if the father did or not. That's the claim from the child, from the mother who didn't see it either. But emergency room checked it out, and they started accusing the mother of feeding lies to her son. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I don't know. I really doubt it, okay? But that kind of stuff does happen, all right? And parents do hit kids in their stomach, and then parents don't do that too, also, but get accused of doing that. So what's going on here? But the father then goes for an ex parte motion, and then, which the mother was to have the child this weekend, and the judge said parenting time is canceled, okay? So the mother does not get to see the child, and she gets only like 12 hours a month with her child. She has another child that she sees full time. So go figure. What's going on here? And you see this in so many cases, that a parent who can't see one of their childs gets to see 3 of the other ones and has them full time, or is taking care of, other children. But one they can't. I don't get that. It's so bad in our family law sections. You got parents who can't see kids, but they're supervising other parents who can't see their kids. Okay? So one parent who can't see their kids is supervising one parent who can't see their kids. And that parent who was being supervised by the other parent is supervising a different parent who can't see their kids. And it's all okay with the judges because that's what the other parent says is okay. But if the other parent said, no, it's not okay to see this person, then you go to a safety center. Well, okay, Yvette didn't get to see her kid during her parenting time, and it was, it was ordered shut down. Yvette has to go file and say, hey, I want a hearing on this. Well, there was a hearing today. Now, what's interesting about this hearing is that it's supposed to be at 2:30. It's supposed to be in front of Judge Brown at the Hennepin County Juvenile Center in room 617. That's what the paperwork said. So I get there about 2:15 or so, and I walk in. I don't see Yvette's name on the board anywhere. Well, okay, said it's room 617, I'll go up there. So I find a bunch of people waiting for the room. Okay, this is what we're expecting. So we're waiting around, but I walk down to the courtroom. There's another court hearing in front of Judge Brown going at the time. Well, I just figured, it's going a little long. Okay, so we're all waiting around. Yvette's talking to her attorney. Attorney has told the court he was there and called, and even after a while called again, say, hey, we're here, here's the contact information. And all of a sudden, about an hour and 10 minutes later, we're all just sitting waiting for this other court case to get out. Court case is run long. And justice should have no time, although you'll hear, Justice, we got to get out of here. No, you can't present any more witnesses. Time's up. It's just, it's so bizarre. You don't get your own defense, because the court's so time conscious. Well, here's one going an hour longer. Okay, well, Yvette's court case should not be very long. Okay, it shouldn't be more than a half an hour. So to wait around for an hour, and the court case could be done by 4:30 very easily, especially if we're supposed to start at 2:30. So all of a sudden, attorney walks out and says, we got to go down another floor, and the court's in another hearing. Well, we don't know why. We're speculating that this judge, that Brown, that was supposed to see the case, was too busy or didn't think they'd finish the case, so they passed us off to another judge that was done. We ended up before Holly Knight in room 534, but when the attorney went down there, they weren't told what room to go to. They were just told it's in another room down on the 5th floor. So he went to all the courtrooms and went to the 534 and couldn't get in. Doors were locked. Starts walking away. Then this clerk comes out, who, by the way, had been up in Judge Brown's room, had been walking back and forth between Judge Brown's room and I'm assume Judge Holly Knight's room. I assume that because I didn't see her go down there, but she walked back, was walking back and forth over this period of an hour, saw her about 3 times. She goes down to, she comes out of the courtroom and says, is Yvette's attorney's here? Court case is done. It was done an hour ago. What? We've already had it. And I'm just going, you got to be kidding. Everybody's here. You as a clerk are walking back and forth. We got the paperwork that shows what judge, what courtroom, what date, and you have a hearing with a different judge in a different courtroom and it's done? Well, her attorney went and talked to the clerk and said, we better get this straightened away. We got people here. How could you have? You knew we were up there. I had contacted everybody. This court knew. And you guys changed the records on us and you're going to do all this? without our knowledge? Well, the clerk of court knew that the father was filing some paperwork on the case to supplement his report. He had hired a guardian ad litem or somebody to review a 5-year-old case and come up with some conclusions on that, was filing that in court. That's what we heard. I don't know if that's the case. But so he was there, so he was called back into the courtroom after this had already been heard. And so about a half an hour later, they come out of the courtroom and the attorney comes first, and he wouldn't talk to me because I was press, and he wouldn't talk to anybody else because I was press. Sitting there, I said, oh, I'll leave. So I went down to the main lobby and waited for everybody to come down the lobby. The attorney came down and left. I came down to, I got to tell you what happened before that. Okay, so all these people are expecting to go in the courtroom. The clerk yells out, okay, it's just, nobody else can come into the courtroom. I'm going, what? These are public courtrooms. I'm thinking this to myself. So I'm going to check it out. So I walk down the courtroom, and the court reporter is not in the courtroom. They're on the outside of the door, and it says, hey, I'm with the press. I'm here to cover the story. I get to be in the courtroom. Isn't this a public court? And she goes, well, yeah, it is, and you raise an interesting issue, So I walk in the courtroom and sit down, and the clerk of court, or the court's assistant, goes over and or talks to the judge. The judge wasn't in the room, and the judge just said, I have to leave. And I have to leave, go talk to media coordinator. I go, what? Wait a second. Why do I need to talk to, what's the media coordinator about? This is a public courtroom. Why do I have to leave? And they go, you just have to leave. That's just what the judge said. I said, well, what's this deal with media coordinator? What's that about? What do I have to coordinate for an open public hearing? I'm not filming anything. I'm just here to watch. And they go, well, that's judge's order. You just better leave. Talk to the media coordinator. Well, I called media coordinator, Mark Affinson, left a message. Now, he is, of course, argued before the U.S. Minnesota Supreme Court last week about cameras in the courtroom. It was in the legislature a week before talking about cameras in the courtroom. This had nothing to do with cameras in the courtroom. This is where the press can sit in a courtroom. Now, this is a juvenile case. The only people talking in this case was the mother and the father and the attorney and the judge. Okay? Why can't people be in the courtroom? There's no kids providing witness. These are communist courts. That's what that judge, Judge Holly Knight, that's what she presided over, was a communist court. Okay? Nobody got to see or hear what was in that court except the people. Now, I did talk to Yvette after she came down to the main lobby there, and I talked to her, and what she said, the first thing she said to me was, the judge ordered me that and removed all custody from me. She said the first order the judge gave was to remove all custody from me. Joint physical and legal custody, removed it all. I lost it all. And I'm going with the first order. What do you mean by that? Well, it was the first hearing, okay? So when nobody was there, the father who saw people walk in and saw Yvette walk in knew that Yvette was there at the courthouse, okay? Somehow he knew that the hearing was in a different room before a different judge. How does that happen? Okay? How is Yvette's lawyer not notified that it's a different courtroom and a different judge? And so he knows and was asked, do you know where they are? Is supposedly, and he said, I don't know where they are. They're not here. So they had a 45-minute conversation in which Yvette lost all custody of her kids without her being present. Okay, as a no-show. Except the court knew she was there. The father knew she was there. 15 people in the court building knew she was there. But what kind of scam are we running here? What are we trying to do? It's just bizarre. Now, what ended up happening is Yvette got her custody back. And then a guardian ad litem is going to be appointed by the court to look into the situation of the son being hit in the stomach to try to figure out what's going on there. You know what? I don't think a guardian ad litem should do that. I think a court should do that. What was interesting is that Yvette's husband showed up with a guardian ad litem named Susan Olson. Now, if that name rings a bell, it's because Susan Olson was the guardian ad litem in the Carver County case dealing with Carolyn Rice. Now, Carolyn Rice had to hide and protect her daughter, who was 14, because her father was abusive. And they ran to Canada. Okay, Susan Olson was providing all kinds of falsehoods that were proved false to the court, but the court ignored all of that and still gave custody to the father, and so the mother and child fled. And Susan Olson was that guardian ad litem. So in the family law circle, she's kind of known as that type of person who will throw a case and go overboard and provide information that isn't true. So the father shows up with Susan Olson and wanting her to be the guardian ad litem. And Susan Olson was up on the 6th floor waiting for the hearing. That, you know, so that's where she was told to go. But there was no hearing up there. So anyway, they have their hearing. Yvette gets her custody back, and now the guardian ad litem gets to decide who gets to keep the kid, but we don't know who, and not who gets to keep the kid, but what's going on, and try to resolve this issue. It could be a lot of things. The father could have hit the son in the stomach. If he did, that's a bad thing. Father needs some counseling. He needs to stop doing that type of behavior. Could the son be antagonizing the father? It doesn't matter. The father shouldn't hit the son in the stomach. Or could the son be making up the story? Could the son be trying to please one parent or the other? Or, you know, this happened in mine situation. The mother of my children would say, well, I got something else to do. Do you want to go to your dad's, or you want to do this with me? Oh, we want to do that with you, you know, because it'd be some big event they'd want to go to, the circus, you know, or something like that. Well, of course kids are going to act that way. And then the mother says, no, you got to go to your dad's. Well, the kids are going to be all mad and stuff. Now, they never, you know, we always had a great time when we were together with the kids, but that kind of stuff would be used. And done, so kids can play this game as to what they want to have accomplished and make allegations or do things to get their way. So who knows what took place, but either way, unless that abuse is proved, you got to work out a different solution and not take this court things and try to deprive each parent of custody of their kid. You know, just to have the judge recognize what's going on, and the judge can say, stop it, and here's what's going to happen if you do this again. Okay? But it's bizarre. Not an open court hearing. So we're gonna pursue that. It's a juvenile case. I can see if a juvenile was testifying, maybe. You know, it really isn't that big of a deal. I mean, kids will tell what they're told to say, or they'll answer a question they're asked, you know. It's really not that big of a deal for them. But it just appalled me that I couldn't be in that courtroom as the press. So Holly Knight, we're going to check it out. And if you had no reason, you gave no reason, we're going to do a complaint to the board on your behavior. So we'll see what happens. Okay, well, life and family law, that's how it goes. So I want you to remind you that you can call in this show anytime, 651-361-8161. And if we see the light blinking, which we may or may not do, we'll pick up your call and you can ask questions or comments. Also, if you got any questions, show ideas, or whatever, speechlessmn@gmail.com. Contact me. And also, you can watch the show on youtube.com/speechlessmn. These shows are for you, for your education and our education and entertainment value. I hope you guys see and understand that there is a problem with our courts. There's a problem with humanity. Let's support the people that are trying to have good things happen. We have freedom, but let's use our freedom to do good and not to do bad things and to destroy other people. Let's be alert with that, help each other out in this. Okay, otherwise people get destroyed. So thanks for watching the show. Appreciate it. We're about out of time here, Dallas, right?
1 minute.
1 minute, all right. The music lasts longer than that, doesn't it? All right, I'm stalling for time is basically what's happening. All right, remember, if you don't stand up for other people's liberties, who's going to stand up for yours? And good men don't do nothing. God bless. Have a great week.
The days go by like the forest sets on fire, and the wind takes the kite as the firefly brings the light. You said to me that you